A lot of people look at Japanese, myself included, and go, oh my gosh, it's so much to learn, literally. My goal was never to teach people Japanese per se, but more or less to teach them strategies to help them learn Japanese. Short-term goals, I want to be able to introduce myself and my favorite instrument by the end of this month. Record yourself, then you start to say, oh my gosh, well that was terrible. And then you start making real improvements. The third one probably is rinse and repeat, to be honest, so that they could have a rich or more informed experience. Yep.
Many people around the world want to learn Japanese. You kind of glommed onto that. Lots of your videos and other online platforms give hints and ideas on something that you call meta-learning strategies. If you had to boil down, let's say, all of the various meta-learning strategies into maybe 3 or so that you could say on the show, what would you say are the most important meta-learning strategies for people in my audience who want to learn Japanese and come to Japan? 3 helpful hints.
Okay. I would say short-term goals. Record yourself.
Record yourself.
Yeah, I'll explain that. And I'll stick to those 2, actually.
Okay.
The third one probably is rinse and repeat, to be honest. But yeah, so short-term goals, a lot of people look at Japanese, myself included, and go, oh my gosh, it's so much to learn, literally. And it clearly is. And if you just run at it head first, you're going to hit a wall and, get discouraged, etc.
Sure.
Obviously, textbooks are great. They're kind of like a map through this muddied water that we tread through. But at the end of the day, you're going to get frustrated if you don't see real progress. So when you make these short-term goals, not just I want to learn Japanese or I want to be fluent, if you actually sit down and say, I want to be able to cook XYZ recipe using a Japanese recipe by the end of this month. Or I want to be able to introduce myself and my favorite instrument by the end of this month, whatever it is. You have to make actual actionable goals on the side of this sort of linear learning so that you can really start learning applicable language that matters to you. And then for the second point, in terms of recording yourself, you have to be able, especially if you're a self-learner, you have to be able to see yourself objectively. So it's kind of like if you're into sports or anything like that, you can sit on the court, dribbling a basketball as much as you want, but you're not going to learn about what really is your weak points or how you did on the actual game unless you've seen yourself play.
Right.
So, you go to the gym, you see a picture of yourself and say, oh, wow, that was bad posture. Same thing with learning language. If you record yourself or if you start looking at your old notes afterwards and you really see what you produced, then you start to say, oh my gosh, well, that was terrible. And then you start making real improvements. So record yourself specifically.
Right on.
And then rinse and repeat.
Rinse and repeat. You've also said in some of your videos or some of your interviews, I can't remember which one, that language comes alive when it's social.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know what you mean, and I agree with that. But we're unable to gather in groups anymore with coronavirus. And so what are some ways to make language learning social in the age of the coronavirus?
One thing right now that most people are actually doing is gaming, for example, playing different games.
Gaming? Oh,
yeah.
That's unexpected.
Yeah, I didn't think I would come up with that one either. So games now, a lot of them are really interactive. So you can obviously play by yourself, but you can also get into these voice chats and things like that. And you can actually start interacting with people digitally. And it's a much more fun environment where, obviously an easier answer would be to say, get a tutor or hire a teacher. And that's great. But there's something different about when you're working laterally with other people and you're all working towards something together and they say something and you're like, oh, I didn't know that word. Now it's new core memory. You start logging all of these different utterances that you wouldn't get if you were just one-on-one trying to derive a certain language experience. So I find doing, for example, gaming, or doing just like, there's like live streams on Twitch, like just like, you know, if you want to produce content, people will interact with you, even YouTube. There are a lot of ways, a lot of Japanese people also that want to interact with language learners. So there are a lot of apps out there. You just have to be careful which ones you pick, because sometimes it just turns into a dating app, and when you know, which may work out for you. But,
right.
You know,
another way to keep it social.
Yeah, another social element.
You've also talked a lot about the need for a focus on learning themes rather than memorizing vocabulary lists.
Yeah.
And I've learned languages myself. I'm a linguistics minor and all that. It is actually the way that they learn languages in Europe. And as you know, yes, they focus on themes and situational, what do you call it, terms or vocabulary, rather than a list of terms. So I thought that was, well, I mean, if you're interested in traditional onsen hot springs, you're going to need to learn a few of the phrases for your onsen hot spring. And you talked about that. I thought that was great.
It's like language learning is personal. So obviously everyone should probably learn how to order something at the restaurant or how to introduce themselves. But at a certain point, language has to be personal. So if you like to, I don't know, skateboard, try to sing something about it in Japanese. Or if you like to do whatever it is, you know, try saying something about it in Japanese.
Back to YouTube. Your videos lately appear to be moving a little bit away from Japanese language instruction and more towards what I would call daily life, travel videos. You were just up in the north, scenic spots. If that observation is correct, what made you change your focus, the different or broader focus?
Yeah, so I'm going to be adding in a mix of different things, but this landscape on YouTube has changed a lot, and that most people obviously want to learn Japanese from a Japanese person. So my goal was never to teach people Japanese per se, but more or less to teach them strategies to help them learn Japanese so that they could have a rich or more informed experience. So now with these videos, where like I obviously, there will always be a link, a learning or education element to it, talking about strategies about how to, you know, fish your own Japanese fish, basically. But in terms of these sort of like lifestyles and these vlogs, my hope is that I want to show a non-translated experience. The videos obviously are translated because they have subtitles, but I want people to see when you learn Japanese to a certain level, you start to unlock different experiences, or you start to unlock, you know, I didn't learn Japanese just to learn the letters. I learned it to meet with the people. And I want to share that my end goal, to connect with amazing people and thus have an amazing, rich experience, to show that.
Right.
You know, I could tell people a million times that learning language is really rewarding, or I can just show it. So I'm trying to sort of infuse more instances where I can share, this is what happens when you learn language. And hopefully that excites a lot of young people. Wow, I'm sounding older here already. But I really hope that excites a lot of students to do something a little bit more creative if they were thinking to do so already.
It preempts a question I was about to ask you later, but I'll come back to it in a moment.
Yeah.
Are you going to make a documentary?
I'd love to.
Oh, yes, I know
I'd love to.
I know you would.
Yeah, I have a couple. I'm like, I didn't realize this was the dream. Apparently, probably my not end goal, but a big goal would be to make like a Netflix style documentary.
I knew it. But
I'm waiting.
You're waiting.
That's like my not until all the pieces are in place, but it's definitely there.
There was that kind of a documentary, I guess you could call it a corporate video, I suppose, that you did, and I forget the municipality. It was I guess it was somewhere near Nagoya, and you were on a bicycle.
Yeah. That was it was around the like Toyota area.
Yeah.
The actual
Toyota.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was around there, and just seeing like more like a deep dive, because Nagoya kind of gets a bad rap.
Yeah.
What do they say about it? It's like one of the most traversed cities where nobody gets off.
Right.
It's like the most famous transfer that nobody ever gets off at, or something like that.
Right. What is it? I guess it's the fourth largest city in Japan.
Yeah, it's huge, and it has
Tokyo, Nagoya, Osaka, and I think Nagoya is probably number 4.
Yeah, and there is just like so like hidden gems across the area, and there's a huge college town out there as well. I wasn't aware of this. A lot of students, they think they want to go to school in Japan, foreign students. They think they want to go to school around Tokyo or Yokohama just because that's what they know.
Yep.
But I found that the more successful and happy students went to school in like Sendai or Nagoya or places like that. So there's a lot of good, like great Google reviews on Nagoya, actually.
Right. Makes sense. How do you always stay so bubbly and happy? I don't think I've ever seen you never smiling, and it's quite addictive. But what's your secret?
Coffee?
Coffee.
No, I don't.
Coffee.
A good dark roast coffee. No, I don't know. It's just I get excited, naturally excited. You know that magical feeling when you finally use Japanese and somebody responded, and it's like, oh my gosh, I actually connected with this person. It wasn't just that textbook page. Like that magical Disney moment is like always inside. So for me, when I talk about languages or when I use language, it's like that magic.
Sure.
So that's probably the smile.
I guess I know the feeling.
Yeah.
Although I don't smile as much as you do.
Well, there's usually oh gosh, why didn't I know that word? Did I say it wrong? There's usually a sense of dread and a 3 a.m. haunting usually, but
it comes
still exciting.
It comes through very clearly in all of your videos.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, it's great. Changing gears again, you've been in Japan quite a while. So 2 questions related to that. In what ways has your opinion of Japan changed, now compared to when you arrived?
Yeah.
What's different, and maybe different in a good way, but also different in a bad way?
Yeah.
You could talk about that.
So on this current stint, I'm on my 5th year here in Japan, but I did a number of different study abroad and research fellowships and stuff over the last 10 years or so. No, that's wrong. No, that's right. For about 10 years or so. And when I first got here, it was still kind of coming off of the whole bubble economy and everything. So there was still Japan was so bright and sparkly, and your dollar went, did it go very far? I can't remember. Yeah, I think that's when the dollar was a lot stronger, if I remember the first time I came here. But anyways, so it was just, it really felt like a land of opportunity. But now, about 10, 15 years later, I have found that Japan doesn't necessarily need as much foreign talent as they say they do. And it's a lot more saturated. So, if I had come here 15 years ago ready to do the work that I'm doing now, I think I would have made even more of a splash and had so much more. I've had a relatively great and easy time, but I've found around me that a lot of people, the job markets, this year is obviously an outlier, but the job markets are completely oversaturated, and there are more Japanese people. For example, the kikoku shijo, the kids who come back after growing up abroad, they're all back home now after the bubble, and they're all grown up and they're working too. Or all the kids who are learning, people say Japanese people have terrible English. Not anymore. That stereotype actually isn't that true anymore. And it's very competitive now, because just being able to speak Japanese isn't really enough anymore, is a huge observation.
It comes with experience of the way the rest of the world manages itself.
Yeah.
Too.
And that's great for Japan. And so, I mean, if anybody is watching and they're trying to move to Japan, I would say back in early 2000s, 90s, if you had just a major or you spoke Japanese, that was enough to do really well. But that is really not the case anymore. And even the idea of a Japanese major, like just like throw it out. Like you can obviously do the Japanese major, but what you really need to succeed here, if that's what you're looking for, is obviously a second or a third skill set, a marketable actual skill. And the things that do really well in Japan, and I'm sure you know this as well, JT, obviously there's obviously legal, obviously finance. These are like kind of like the big expat realms.
Sure.
Software engineering, IT, that's huge now, but it's really competitive. And but then there are other things that
you can code.
Yeah, well, I try not to code. I try to outsource. But yeah, just things like IT and what is it? Another thing is like the patent world. That's still legal, but like the patent world is huge still. There are different ways you can break in that way, but you gotta add in a second skill, even if it's like graphic design. I say that like it's small, but even graphic design will do very well for you here in Japan. Logo design, art, etc. So, yeah, it's changed.
It's changed. How has your opinion of Japan changed the better your Japanese gets? And I asked that second question because, and I'd love to hear your opinion or any anecdotes on this.
Yeah.
I think it's important for anyone who's interested in coming to live in Japan to know that you talked about a second skill set or a third skill set or fourth skill set, whatever.
10th.
But the first skill set absolutely has to be Japanese. If you want to understand Japanese people and Japanese society in any depth, not just shallow, anime or facade of, I ate sushi. If you want to understand Japan in any way, excuse me, Japanese language for me is essential. And I've found the better I get, the closer I get. And I just wanted to hear your experiences on that since you are the Japanese teacher of record on YouTube.
I completely agree with you there. Yeah, it's you got to learn the language first, but also you also need to keep learning while you're going. So it's a constant uphill battle, a fun one.
Thanks for tuning in. For more insights on Japan from people who know Japan, be sure to subscribe to the RONJIRU Japan YouTube channel right now. Just click the subscribe button below this video and the notification bell so you'll always know when we post something new. From RONJIRU Japan in Tokyo, I've been JT. See you in the next video, everyone. O genki de ne.